Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep today into the world of nuclear receptors.
Oh, these are fascinating.
Yeah, they really are.
They're like the master conductors of our cells.
They really are orchestrating everything,
Yeah,
growth, development, metabolism.
absolutely.
We've got some really cool papers and lectures to dig into today.
It's going to be fun.
And you know what?
Right.
You might be surprised to learn that just a tiny mutation in one of these nuclear receptors can lead to, like, a thyroid disorder.
Yeah, it's true.
It's wild.
These receptors are incredibly powerful. They're like messengers, that translate hormonal signals into like genetic instructions.
So they're basically like the interpreters of the cellular world.
Exactly.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So tell me more. How do they actually work?
So nuclear receptors are specialized proteins,
Okay.
and they're found inside our cells. And they have this amazing ability to bind to hormones.
Okay.
And this binding then directly influences which genes get turned on or off. Yeah, ultimately shaping how our bodies function.
So it's like a cellular communication network, kind of,
Yeah,
with hormones acting as messengers, and these receptors, they decide which messages get through.
exactly.
Wow.
And to add another layer of complexity,
Yeah.
we have three main classes of these receptors.
Okay, let's break it down.
Okay, so we've got type I, type 2, and type 3,
Gotcha.
each with their own unique characteristics and functions.
What makes each type different?
So let's start with type I receptors.
Okay.
These are usually found in the cytoplasm,
Oh,
just kind
yeah.
of hanging out, waiting for their specific hormone to come along.
Like patiently waiting.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And once the hormone binds, this dynamic duo travels to the nucleus,
Good.
where they bind to DNA and start influencing gene expression.
So they need that hormone escort to get where they need to go.
Exactly.
Okay. What about type 2 receptors?
So type 2 receptors are a bit different.
Okay.
They prefer to be already bound to DNA, hanging out with a partner called the retinoid X receptor.
Okay.
They're ready to spring into action as soon as their specific hormone arrives.
So they're always on call, ready to go.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and what about the mysterious type 3 receptors?
Well, type 3 receptors are still a bit of an enigma.
Oh, well.
We know they're structurally similar to the other types,
Okay.
but scientists are still working on pinning down their exact functions.
So they're the rebels of the nuclear receptor family.
Yeah, you could say that.
They're keeping their secrets close.
Exactly.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Now, I remember reading something about the VRB oncogene being a mutant form of the thyroid hormone receptor.
Right.
Can you explain that a bit more?
Yeah, that's a prime example of how impactful even a tiny change in a nuclear receptor can be.
Yeah.
So the VRB oncogene is responsible for certain cancers, and it's essentially a mutated version of the thyroid hormone receptor called TRIRA.
So just a small alteration in that receptor can have huge implications for our health.
Absolutely.
That's a bit scary,
Yeah, it is.
but also highlights how important it is to understand how these receptors work.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And speaking of thyroid hormone receptors, or TRs,
Okay.
they're a great example of how these molecular messengers can influence our health and development.
Yeah.
They play crucial roles in everything,
Okay.
from brain development and hearing to bone growth, metabolism,
Wow.
and even heart rate regulation.
That's quite a resume.
It is.
I guess that brings us back to that surprising fact about thyroid disorders being linked to mutations in these receptors.
Yeah.
It's incredible how these tiny proteins can have such far-reaching effects.
It really is.
And their role during development is especially critical, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, did you know that the absence of thyroid hormone during brain development can actually lead to irreversible mental retardation?
It's true.
And the metamorphosis of tadpoles into frogs is strictly controlled by thyroid hormone.
It is, yeah.
Without it, you'd have a lot of giant tadpoles swimming around.
That's a funny thought.
Giant tadpoles. I love it.
Yeah,
So TRs are basically the conductors of this developmental orchestra,
they are.
making sure everything happens at the right time and in the right way.
Exactly.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And to understand their function even better, we need to dive into how they actually bind to hormones and regulate gene expression.
Absolutely.
All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty.
Okay.
I'm ready to learn more about this molecular dance.
So the process of ligand binding is like a perfect handshake.
Okay.
Specific hormones act as ligands, fitting perfectly into the receptor's binding site.
Okay.
This binding triggers a cascade of events that can either activate or repress gene expression.
So each hormone has its own designated receptor, like a custom-fit puzzle piece.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this binding process sets off a chain reaction called transactivation.
Okay.
So upon ligand binding,
Yeah.
the receptor undergoes a conformational change.
Okay.
Or essentially, it changes shape. This allows it to recruit other proteins called co-regulators.
So the receptor has a little entourage.
You could say that.
Okay.
And together, this complex interacts with specific DNA sequences controlling which genes get transcribed.
So it's like the receptor and its entourage have backstage passes to the DNA concert, deciding which genes get to perform.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
But how do they decide which genes to target?
Well, that's where things get even more interesting.
Okay.
The position of a specific part of the receptor called helix 12
Okay.
plays a crucial role.
Okay.
It's like a molecular switch that flips upon hormone binding, turning gene expression on or off.
So cool.
Yeah, and this brings us back to the fascinating dual role of TRs.
Okay.
They can act as both gene silencers and activators, depending on whether the thyroid hormone T3 is present.
So they can turn the lights on and off depending on the signal.
Exactly.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
How do they manage that?
It all boils down to a delicate balance between co-activators and core pressors. These protein teams are constantly competing to influence the TR's activity.
So it's more like a dimmer switch than a simple on-off switch.
Exactly.
With those co-activators and core pressors constantly adjusting the volume of gene expression.
That's a good way to put it.
This is getting pretty complex.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
But it highlights the intricate control mechanisms at play within our cells.
Absolutely.
And to add another layer of complexity, there are specific DNA sequences called negative thyroid hormone response elements, or NTREs,
Okay.
where TRs can actually repress gene activity even when T3 is present.
Wait, so even when the hormone is there, these NTREs can override the signal and keep those genes silent.
Exactly.
It's like a built-in veto system.
It is.
That's wild.
It ensures that certain genes remain off even when the hormone is signaling for them to be activated.
Wow, this gene regulation system is incredibly intricate.
It is.
With hormones, receptors, co-activators, core pressors, and even specific DNA sequences all playing their part.
It's a complex dance.
It really is. And as we delve deeper into this microscopic world,
Yeah.
we begin to appreciate the incredible complexity and precision of these cellular processes.
Absolutely.
Well, you've certainly piqued my curiosity, but I have to admit, my brain needs a little time to process all of this information.
Of course.
We'll pick up this fascinating conversation in part 2 of our deep dive.
Sounds good.
See you there.
See you then. Welcome back to our deep dive
Oh, it's so good to be back.
into the world of nuclear receptors.
I feel like we've already learned so much
We have.
about these tiny little proteins and how they can impact, like, literally everything in our bodies.
Yeah, it's really remarkable
it's amazing.
how these tiny little things can have such a big impact on our health and development.
Absolutely.
But you might be surprised to learn
Okay.
that this whole process isn't as simple as just hormones floating around and finding their receptors.
Oh, yeah.
It's actually much more organized and localized than we initially thought.
Organized.
Yeah.
How
So imagine, think of it this way. Imagine like a bustling city with different neighborhoods,
Okay.
each specializing in a particular activity.
Okay, I'm with you. I'm following.
Yeah, so instead of signals being broadcast everywhere,
Okay.
they're directed to specific areas within the cell.
So it's like instead of sending out a mass email,
Yeah,
you're sending like a targeted text message.
exactly.
Okay. Okay, I like that.
Yeah, and these specialized areas are called microdomains.
Microdomains.
Okay. They're like tiny compartments within the cell,
Right.
each dedicated to a specific task.
Gotcha.
This ensures that signals are delivered to the right place at the right time,
Makes sense.
making the whole process much more efficient.
So it's like having separate departments within a company,
Exactly.
each handling a specific function.
Yeah,
I can see how that would be more organized than just having everyone running around randomly.
exactly. Much more efficient.
So how does this all tie back to our nuclear receptors?
Well, these microdomains, they play a crucial role in regulating the activity of nuclear receptors.
Okay.
To understand how,
Yeah.
we need to introduce another key player,
Okay, hit me.
a kinase anchoring proteins, or ACAPs.
ACAPs.
Yeah, I know, it's a mouthful.
It's a long one.
But think of ACAPs as like the organizers of these cellular neighborhoods.
Yeah.
They bind to an enzyme called protein kinase A, or PKA,
Okay.
and anchor it to specific locations within the cell.
So they're like the city planners, making sure the PKA is stationed in the right neighborhood to do its job.
Precisely.
I like it.
And this strategic placement of pKa is what creates these microdomains,
Okay.
allowing for highly localized and controlled signaling events.
I see. So by controlling where pKa is located,
Right.
AKPs essentially create these signaling hotspots within the cell.
Exactly.
Okay, but why is that so important?
Well, this localized signaling ensures that the right messages are delivered to the right receptors at the right time.
Okay.
It's like having a dedicated postal service for each neighborhood, ensuring that mail is delivered efficiently and accurately.
Right. You don't want your mail going to the wrong address.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And disruptions in these microdomains can have serious consequences.
Uh-huh.
If pKa is mislocalized or AKPs aren't functioning properly, it can lead to signaling chaos within the cell.
So it's like a misdirected package causing havoc in the postal system.
Precisely.
Okay.
And this disruption can contribute to a variety of diseases,
So, yeah.
including heart disease, cancer, and even neurological disorders.
Wow, that's a sobering thought.
Yeah.
These tiny microdomains really do play a crucial role in our overall health.
They do, yeah.
Amazing.
And this understanding is also helping scientists develop new drugs that target these microdomains.
Whoa.
Imagine being able to design drugs that specifically manipulate pKa activity in a particular microdomain.
That would be incredible.
Right.
Like it could revolutionize how we treat certain diseases, targeting the problem at its source.
Exactly. By understanding the intricate workings of these microdomains, we can develop more targeted and effective therapies with fewer side effects.
That's the dream.
It is.
This is all so fascinating.
It is, isn't it?
We've gone from exploring these tiny nuclear receptors
Yeah.
to uncovering a hidden network of communication channels within our cells.
It's amazing.
It's amazing how these seemingly insignificant components play such crucial roles in our biology.
It is, and we've only just begun to scratch the surface.
Right.
There's still so much more to discover about these intricate cellular processes.
Well, I'm definitely hooked.
Good.
I can't wait to see what other wonders await us as we continue our deep dive.
Me too.
What's next on our agenda? Welcome back to the deep dive.
We should be back.
We've been on quite a journey,
We have.
exploring the fascinating world of nuclear receptors and
Yeah.
how they regulate just about everything in our bodies.
It's amazing, isn't it?
I know, it's mind-blowing. But before we wrap up,
Okay.
I want to kind of revisit something we talked about a bit earlier,
Yeah.
that binding of ligands to these receptors.
Right.
You mentioned it's like a perfect handshake.
Yeah.
But can you break down like what's happening at the molecular level?
Sure. So the binding of a ligand, like a hormone, to its receptor triggers what we call a conformational change in the receptor.
Okay.
Think of it like, those protein origami masterpieces
Yeah.
that unfold into a new shape.
Okay.
This new shape is what allows the receptor to interact with other proteins and ultimately influence gene expression.
So the ligand's like a key, unlocking the receptor's potential to regulate gene activity.
Exactly.
Right.
And different ligands can have different effects on the receptor, leading to either the activation or repression of specific genes.
So it's not just about the binding itself,
Right.
but also the type of ligand that binds.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's like having different keys that open different doors within the cell.
I like that.
Yeah, leading to different outcomes.
So this is where I get a little lost.
Okay.
How do these receptors actually bind to DNA?
So they have
Do they have like special DNA grabbing appendages?
They do. They have a specific region called the DNA binding domain,
Okay.
which recognizes and binds to specific DNA sequences.
Gotcha.
These sequences, known as hormone response elements,
Okay.
act like landing pads for the receptor complex.
So it's like the receptor complex has a GPS system that guides it to these specific DNA addresses.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And once bound to DNA, the receptor can then recruit other proteins, including those coactivators and core pressors we discussed earlier,
Right.
to ultimately influence the transcription of nearby genes.
It's amazing how everything is like interconnected,
It is.
from the initial ligand binding to the ultimate regulation of gene expression.
It's a beautiful system.
So we've explored how nuclear receptors work,
Yeah.
but like why are they so important for our overall health and development?
Well, nuclear receptors are involved in virtually every aspect of our physiology.
Wow.
They regulate our metabolism, immune system, growth, development, you name it.
We've already seen how crucial they are for brain development
Hmm.
and even like the metamorphosis of tadpoles into frogs.
Exactly.
It's amazing.
And they continue to play critical roles throughout our lives, ensuring our bodies function properly and adapt to changing conditions.
But what happens when these receptors go awry? We
Right.
talked about the VRV oncogene being a mutant form of the thyroid hormone receptor,
Right.
which can lead to cancer.
Yeah.
Are there other examples of how receptor dysfunction can impact health?
Absolutely. Mutations or dysregulation of nuclear receptors have been linked to a wide range of diseases, including diabetes, obesity, infertility, cardiovascular disease, and even some neurological disorders.
That's quite a list.
It is.
So understanding these receptors is not only crucial for comprehending our basic biology,
Right.
but also for developing new therapies for these conditions.
Absolutely. Scientists are exploring new avenues for treating a variety of diseases by targeting nuclear receptors with drugs.
So we could potentially develop drugs that mimic hormones or block receptor activity,
Exactly.
ultimately manipulating gene expression to achieve therapeutic benefits.
Precisely. That's incredible. The field of nuclear receptor drug discovery is rapidly evolving and holds immense promise for the future of medicine.
This deep dive has been incredible.
It has, hasn't it?
We've gone from exploring the basic mechanisms of nuclear receptors to uncovering their vast impact on our health
Yeah,
and the potential for developing new therapies.
absolutely.
It's been a pleasure having you guide us through this microscopic world.
It's been my pleasure.
I hope everyone listening has gained a newfound appreciation for the intricate complexity and elegance of our cells.
Me too.
It's amazing how these tiny proteins, working tirelessly behind the scenes, play such a critical role in shaping who we are.
Absolutely.
And with that, we conclude our deep dive into the world of nuclear receptors.
It's been fun.
Until next time, keep those synapses firing and never stop exploring the wonders of science.